Hey, this is Sandy.
And Randy.
And we're here on AT Corner.
Being an athletic trainer comes with ups and downs, and we're here to showcase them all.
Join us as we share our world in sports medicine.
Welcome back to another episode of AT Corner. We are closing up National Athletic Training Month with a very special interview.
And not only a special interview, but I cannot believe how lucky we are to have this much one-on-one time with the Julie Max.
Yes, it was really cool, but also the fact that we had 2 Hall of Famers to interview for National Athletic Training Month, I feel like is a pretty cool feat.
Now, I don't think someone as respected as Julie needs an introduction from us, but since Julie was one of Randy's biggest mentors, he's going to introduce her.
Yes, I was very lucky to be able to be a student under her and then also an employee for her as a grad assistant. So Julie completed her bachelor's at Cal State Fullerton and received her master's from APU. She went through the internship route to become certified, and fun fact, she was a student of Bill Chambers.
Another legend.
Yes. Also, we cannot have an interview with Julie Max without covering probably the biggest topic. After a lifetime of her volunteer work, she became the first female president of the NATA.
That's a quiz bowl question sometimes, guys.
Yes, it is. And her service didn't end there. She is retired now after a 40-year career, and she continues to give back to the profession in many ways as possible. I think it's time that we hear from Julie. We had to start this in the most nerdy way. Instead of just regular icebreakers, we go with cryo breakers. Dr. Sang would be very proud. So first question, what made you become an athletic trainer?
That is a cryo breaker for sure. It is a cryo breaker. I'm probably going to answer it in a nerdy answer, and that is probably what many athletic trainers would say. I was far from a very good athlete, but I was an athlete. I was a participant. I was very active in college, but I was always on the B team. I was not very good, but I could run, and I had a heart, and I had passion. And so I knew I loved athletics, and my other love was medicine. And so I really didn't have the opportunity because of financial reasons to go to med school. So when I found that I could take the world of sport and the world of medicine, and there was something that blended that I could use those two loves called athletic training, then I thought I have died and gone to heaven. So for me, it was the passion of two worlds that came together. They didn't collide, but they came together. And that's how I found athletic training.
Nice. That's awesome. That sounds like my athletic prowess. Definitely B team, maybe C team.
So our second cryo breaker is one of our favorites that we created. What is your athletic training spirit animal? And this is any tool of the trade, modality, rehab tool, tape braces, etc. that you've found throughout your entire practice that represents you as a clinician.
You know, I'm always going to be different in how I answer these things. And so I don't know if this is what you're looking for, but this is the truth. And that is, I would have to pick the tool most helpful for me have been my hands. And it's not anything I'm going to pick out of the toolbox or the athletic training kit because that can be put in there for me. It could be on a list, but I wanted something that was identifiable to me and something special to me that was a tool that would never fail me. A tool that no matter if I didn't have a textbook or if I didn't have a kit or if I didn't have tape or if I didn't have a brace, I always had this tool that it was always with me. I didn't have to pack it. It never failed me. And did I have to become better with my tools? Of course. Did I have to learn how to use my tools better? Of course. But that's what education in athletic training is about. So I think I would have to answer my hands.
That's a good one. I like that.
I knew that this was going to be a great interview, but I didn't know that within 2 minutes my mind was going to be blown.
Oh, no. Well, maybe we should stop now then.
Well, stop while we're ahead, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
So, one of the unique things about our podcast is we like to blend education and stories. So, we wanted to know if you have a story or experience or anything that in athletic training that confirmed that you are in the right job.
Yeah. I could probably come up with some, over the years, some funny stories, some stories of confirmation. But this is really more over a serious one that impacted me early on. And it's very simple. I had gone to a national meeting, a national convention, and I had a roommate because we always would, as students, and I wasn't a student at the time, but I was a certified athletic trainer, that we would help each other out. And so I had a person that was staying with me for the national meeting. And in the evening, I had gone to bed. This person had come back to the room. I had heard a crash in the bathroom. I finally got up to see it was unusual. And this roommate was face down on the floor, breathless and pulseless. And at that time, obviously, you don't think, you just react, and you let your favorite, most used tools come into practice. And I was able to roll this friend over, make an assessment, start CPR, and literally life, breath, pulse came back in a bathroom of a hotel at a national meeting early on in my career. Obviously, after she didn't even want to roll 911, she's thinking, I'm here. I'm thinking I'll follow up tomorrow. But I think it was a confirmation for me that it might not have been traditionally what we do in an athletic training clinic or on the field, but the carryover of what I had learned and what I knew I would potentially apply for the future was monumental for me to know I'm where I need to be.
Wow.
Yeah, man, to just think that happened at a place where you wouldn't think you'd have to respond to something like that.
Oh, heavens no. I was sound asleep,
Wow.
That
I
is,
was out cold.
yeah, that's definitely not the wake up call that you're hoping for at the hotel.
That's exactly right. Exactly right. But I think it's indicative of the profession. We always tell our staff, our students, whomever we're in that position, every day is different. You walk in to work every day, you never know what you're going to see, but be prepared for everything. And it was the same thing. And I always say, if I'm in Sam's Club or Costco or a grocery store and I go down on aisle 4, I hope an athletic trainer finds me.
Yeah, no, definitely, for sure.
So speaking of every day is different, you kind of talked about how that was early on in your career. How have the demands of athletic training changed over the years from when you first entered the workforce until now?
We can only imagine, Sandra, that for being in the profession, and I'm proud to say this, people that get older don't like to say they're older. I can't wait to say I'm older. I can't wait to tell everybody my age. I have no issues with that because I think it's indicative of exposure and experience and wisdom. So having said that, you can only imagine after 40 years in the profession, massive changes have taken place. Massive. I wouldn't even know where to begin. And I'm so proud to look and read the NATA journal or to see where we are right now and to see where we came from and where we have come to. The list would be too long. I don't even know where to even begin to say where we've come from. And, I don't ever like telling the stories that we walked to, in the snow with no shoes for 5 miles. I don't like those stories, but they apply in any profession. And that is, it had to start someplace. And there were very few women, very few females in the profession. Never did you see a female on a football field. Never did you see a female, rarely in a clinical setting when I first started. So that's the beginning phases of this. And monumentally, the changes have been exciting. So I don't even know specifically how to answer that other than look at 40 years of where we've come from and where we are today.
Yeah, definitely. I would even say, shoot, like the last 5, 10 years, it just seems like so much has changed just in the span of our career. It just seems like so much growth.
Right, it has, for sure.
Yeah, both on the big scale, you see women in the NFL, and also small scale.
Exactly. Never would that have been the case. I mean, at the national meetings, there were very few women that were even allowed to go to the meetings.
Wow.
They didn't even go. So those changes have been huge, and the women in leadership. I mean, the list is endless.
Yeah, definitely. Well, speaking about leadership, there's different expectations depending on the role that an athletic trainer is in. And how do those expectations change when taking a leadership or being a supervisor for a staff compared to being the support staff role? So like the head athletic trainer versus the assistant athletic trainers, how do those roles differ?
Yeah. Randy, I always met with my staff early on and throughout the year. And I think my leadership philosophy was that for me, in my institution and in our clinical setting, I didn't want there to be a separation. I wanted us to all feel the same, all take on the same ownership and responsibility. But I always said the difference of my position and my assistant's position is I wore the flak jacket. I took the bullet. I stepped up and protected. But outside of that, I wanted to do the same job they did. And I wanted them to learn how to do my job. And so I think the main difference is I wasn't afraid to be in front, behind the podium, and they chose not to be. So it worked out beautifully that I protected. I was at the lead. I took the first bullet. But outside of that, we all learned each other's role and job. So at any given time, we could step in and do it. And I don't think that's a philosophy of a lot of institutions across the country. I don't think that's a philosophy because I think there's too much ego involved in it. And, this is what I do. This is what I own. Don't forget it. I prayed never to be that kind of leader. It wasn't about me. It was about the team. So I think that's the biggest difference. Don't be afraid to protect, step up, defend the people that are behind you.
And I think it feeds our theme of multidisciplinary and team approach to healthcare.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I mean, that's, I think, a lot of where it comes from, for sure.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said the ego, because I feel like for a lot of young athletic trainers, that's really hard to let go. I know I've struggled that because you're trying to show that you can do it and you're trying to show your place, and sometimes that's hard to let go.
It is. It's a delicate balance.
Man, Julie, you're crushing it with the segues, because that went right into
Speaking of balance.
Yeah, speaking of balance.
I'm smooth. I was doing this. Come on, kids. I'm giving you the clue. Come on.
So, what would you recommend for the young athletic trainers out there, or maybe the ones that struggle with work-life balance? What would you recommend to maintain a good work-life balance?
That's always it's a tough question, but a critically important question. We didn't even know how to spell life balance in our early years because there was none. There was none. We were the generation, especially at a Division I institution, where a 24-hour day was owned by you. And so there was no such thing as I have something more important at home or my kids. It didn't even exist then. And I think that, Sandra, is one of the changes. And that occurred during my presidency, by the way, where somebody came up and said something about life balance, and we had no idea what that was until we started looking into how badly we had prepared our people, our athletic trainers. So it has come full circle to not have any, to identify the crucialness of knowing that this is your job, but it is not your life. And so how do you teach that? You just make sure that it's in your management style. It's with your staff. It's how you teach your students. I think everybody has to define life balance differently. I went to one of dozens of leadership workshops to try to learn to be a better leader for myself. And one of them was an awesome illustration. They made us on a board draw a wheel and put spokes in the wheel. And all we did was we started easy and created 6 lines of 6 spokes. And in this leadership program, they said, now I want you to write on the line the 6 things most important for you in your life to be attentive to. It could be anything. For me, it was my spirituality, my church, my family at home, exercise, health, wellness. So you can identify anything on your 6 spokes, knowing that if one of those didn't exist, what happens to your wheel? It gets off kilter.
Yeah.
And so it was probably the best illustration for all of us to identify really what life balance is about. But you get to pick what's on your spoke. I'm not going to tell you, Randy, you better go home to Sandra. That's got to be a life balance, when maybe that's not a life balance for you. Sandra is not one of your spokes. She needs to be, but that's my opinion. But the illustration is, it helped all of us decide how to identify life balance and individually what was most important to us. And that's where life balance started kicking in for me, is to say, okay, let's identify your spokes. How can I get you out of this clinic so you could go home and have some life balance? Because you see, the reality that people miss is, if my staff or my students don't have life balance, they bring that into the clinic. Their wheel is off kilter. They come in, well, I feel that, and everybody else feels it. So if I'm a really smart manager and a really smart leader, I'm going to do everything I can to identify your life balance and help you achieve that.
How do you communicate that work-life balance to other parts of the department? How do you emphasize that culture to like the coaches or the AD staff, or just all the inner workings of athletics, or at least start that conversation?
Many of them don't know how to spell life balance themselves, because it's not a crucial thing for them. They look at life a little bit differently than the athletic trainers. And so it was part of the time spent with them to say, it might not be important for you, but I'm going to send Randy home because he's already put in this many hours, and your shift will be covered, your practice will be covered, your event will be covered, but he needs to spend more time with the things in his life that balances him. So it's an opportunity for you to share that. Well, can you imagine the first few conversations with specific coaches that I work with? It was like, I really don't care if Randy goes home. And that's when you have the courage to step up and say, he doesn't work for you. Randy works for me, and it's important to me. So he's going to go home, and I'm going to work track and field today. So how do you communicate that to those that don't understand? You just stay with it and stay with it. And then they finally get it. They do.
I think the culture is changing too, because if we put different expectations on ourselves, if I keep telling everyone, athletic trainers, we work our life away, then that's the expectation of us. But if I help cultivate that new culture that work-life balance is important, and I think that's what's really happening. A lot of people are realizing that it is.
Mm-hmm. There's just no question. And I think others realize that it is a change of culture. And I think it's a change of times. And I'm happy about that. Really happy about it. So keep it up, you guys.
So I know that you've mentored, I don't even know that I could give an accurate amount of how many people that you've touched in your career and now. What are some key takeaways that you've hoped graduate assistants or young athletic trainers or seasoned athletic trainers who you've worked with would take with them after working under your leadership?
I know I've taken away a lot. I got a huge list.
Well, thank you for the comment, Sandra. And there have been 40 years of students and assistants and graduate assistants and coaches. And I appreciate you asking me that question, because it's probably the most important question of the hundreds of interviews that I've had that I love answering the most. And that is, I would hope that you would walk away and not, if you had something to remember about me, I would hope that you would remember the most important thing would be to be and lead with character. That I would hope that my staff and my students would understand the most important thing to me is not that I can do a Lockman. It's not that I can do a great ACL recon rehab. It's not that I can make an assessment for a concussion. I don't want to be remembered for that. I want to be remembered. And the takeaway is whatever you leave with me, that you own your own character. And I can only identify my own character. I always wanted to lead with honesty, integrity, fairness, and kindness. Did I fall short daily? Of course. But at the end of the day, if that was my North Star, then I don't think I ever failed my students. And I think it's important because you walk away then, and you could ask me a million questions that I've already answered a million times. But, and maybe it's another segue question for you, but that would be what I would say was the most important thing to send my students. Own who you are, find that you're a man and a woman of great character, and that will never, ever fail you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we are in a people profession, whether it's our patients or the staffs that we work with, in the athletics department and everything. Like, we do have to work with people. And I think being a great person, or at least striving to do that, will go a long way.
It does. They won't forget.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So as we kept talking about work-life balance, one of the important things to work-life balance is volunteer work. And we know you've done a ton of volunteer work. What was the most rewarding and the most challenging parts of your volunteer work?
The most challenging was the difficulty of maintaining life balance. How was that?
Spot on.
Look at the connections.
That was the most difficult, because you volunteer outside of your day job, in addition to your day job. So volunteering was not one of my spokes on my wheel, but it became one. And so if I only have 6 spokes, something had to give. And so the difficulty was creating a life balance, but still giving back service. So that was the most difficult thing of maintaining that. The most rewarding thing was, as I learned how to do it, I learned I could volunteer and have life balance at the same time. So the issue was my negative and my positive. You see, it was my greatest challenge to figure it out. But once I did, it was like, it was my greatest moment of, this can be done. We can do this. And there you have it.
What got you started into volunteer work? What made you want to really go into volunteering your time for the state, district, and national levels?
Mentors, people ahead of me. And they were men. They were all men, because there were so few women in the profession nationally at all. And they were men that were ahead of me. I was fortunate enough to work with at least 2 presidents of the NATA, that I was a student under one of them, and the first female student under them, and conversations of having with him that I'm working alongside of a male student. We're doing the same thing. Why can't I go on the football field? Why can't I go out there? And to watch his answer, what's he going to say? Because you're a female? So I was a challenge from the get-go, with all of these people. But I think that once I was able to say, same skill, same knowledge, same passion, same opportunity, then what's my next step? And they said, watch this. I want you to volunteer for the governmental affairs committee. And that was my very first one. I didn't even know anything about government. Nothing. I didn't even, nothing. I knew nothing about it. I didn't even know where my state capital was. So I'm thinking, really? But that was the only position for a student that was available. I didn't know what I was doing. And that was the start.
Wow,
And
that's
then
crazy.
from that point on, I went to my first meeting and thinking, I don't even know how to spell this word, let alone what it is involved. But I got a taste of giving back, even as a student. And that's where it all started.
That's really cool.
Yeah, well, look what happened. I got crazy.
All the way up to Hall of Fame.
Exactly.
So actually, speaking of Hall of Fame, when you look at your fellow Hall of Fame members, we just talked to Andy, and we're so lucky to have both of you on for this National Athletic Training Month. What traits do you believe that you share with other Hall of Famers, both at the FWATA level or at the NATA level?
You already know the answers as students. Um, you know the uniqueness that you're not afraid to work hard. You're not afraid of challenges. But I think some of the uniquenesses that I would think is, you can't be labeled a leader if you turn around and nobody's following you. You could be the greatest leader in the world, but if you don't have the respect, if people don't want and have the drive to follow this leader, you are not a leader. So they're leaders because they have gained the respect. They have worked hard for that. And I would really hope, Sandra, that every one of the Hall of Famers that I have met have the same qualities as a men or women of character. I think they lead with integrity. I think they have a compassionate heart, or they wouldn't have survived. I think that there's a uniqueness. I could give you a list of adjectives, but I think that's one of them, and or several of them. I read this quote, and I was going to end with this if you're going to ask me what advice could I give. So let's just get to that. Not that I'm pushing this on, but it's my own segue, and that is that. And I adopted this some time ago, and that is if you learn to love, this is good. If you learn to love hard work, if you're willing to work hard and hard work doesn't scare you, then watch out. All roads are going to open up for you. And I read that and I embraced that for myself. And I thought, how true is that? If I teach my students to learn to love hard work, and you are willing to work hard and it doesn't scare you, then that's what will make you different. That's what will make me want to hire you. It's a component. So I know I got up a little off track, but I'll bring us back, to the finish line. And that is, I think those are the characteristics of a Hall of Famer. They learn to love hard work.
We asked you to put into words something that really is difficult to put in words, what all traits Hall of Famers have. And I think what you were saying goes along the lines of, if you meet a Hall of Famer, you know one.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's cool. I have never heard it said quite like that, but as one myself, that's a true compliment. And I would think that if you said that statement to any other Hall of Famer, they would be touched by that. That's cool.
So I think we kind of got a sense of how this answer will go, and how you've described it really explains a lot. But what does being in the NATA Hall of Fame mean to you?
I got emotional the day I got the call. I was emotional the day I accepted the award. I'm emotional to answer this question on this day of 2020 when I hear that I'm even remotely in the same category. I'm even on that list. It's overwhelmingly humbling to this day, because I know the other Hall of Famers. I know them. They're my good friends. It means the world to me. I want to be bigger than that. I think it's the pinnacle for me of my career. And I even heard that one time and then had to look up Pinnacle. And then I gave a motivational presentation one time on what does it mean to meet your pinnacle. And it was all based on climbing and reaching your summit and reaching Mount Everest. And I gave this big video on what it takes to do that. Now, what does that have to do with your question? It was a sense of summiting for me. I summited when I got that award. And I could get emotional now thinking, so you see what it means to me to this day. And it's mine. And I'm in my room and I have a gavel. I don't have the plaque up. I don't do plaques. I don't do plaques. In my office, I don't do plaques. In my room, I don't do plaques. But I do have the gavel. And when I look at that, I think I summited with that. So it's very important to me.
Wow, that's awesome. That's amazing.
So this is actually Sandra's favorite part of the podcast in general is action items. She loves, what am I getting?
If someone wanted to get involved with volunteer work, how would you motivate them, or how would you suggest for them to find the motivation within themselves to give back to the profession and volunteer?
Sandra coming in with the hot questions.
That's a hot question. I would probably, and let's just say it doesn't have to be a student. It could be a GA. I would probably sit them down, create an atmosphere that would create an atmosphere of how lucky do they think that they are to be where they are. You got this job. How lucky are you? We used to say to our students all the time, there are only 6 chairs and you're sitting in one of them. How lucky are you? I know how lucky you are, but how lucky do you feel that you are to sit in 6 chairs when we had 78 candidates? So I would probably create an environment to make them think, and I would create the environment to make them realize how fortunate they are to be not in my office, but in that chair. And then I would probably switch it very fast to say, and who are the people that got you in that chair? And how did they do it? And how many volunteered to be in a position to make you available today? And make them reflect on that a little bit. Everybody has a person in their life that was monumental for them to be where they are today. And then I would probably switch it very quickly to say, I think it's your turn. I think it's your turn. You need to pay it forward to the person behind you. And then you create that environment that makes them want to pay it forward. That's easy for me to do. I have good friends that say, because I'm a master manipulator, and I had to really think, wow, that doesn't sound very nice, but I am. And I turned it that you can manipulate positively. You can manipulate somebody's mind to think for a positive outcome. And so I recognize it was God's gift that I was the master manipulator. So I would make them think about how important it was that got them there, and it was their turn. And if they didn't bite, then I knew that they weren't ready, and I wasn't going to force I'm not going to force you to volunteer, because it has to come from at the cellular level. Trust me. So that's a good question, though.
That's
wow,
all. That's all I have.
Left her speechless.
Yeah, I like that. See, that's manipulating you, Sandra. Sorry.
I know this was a really special episode for us to record, so I hope that you guys really enjoyed it as much as we did. And if you did enjoy it, please, please, please share this with a friend. 1-tap rate, or you can write a review. All of those things really help us out. And if you guys are new, we actually do every other episode as education or stories. So next episode is going to be another story episode. And if you want to submit your story for a chance to be featured on our show, head over to our Instagram at atcornerpodcast. Lastly, don't forget we have an AT Corner community Facebook group for you all to join to connect with other ATs and listeners of the show. Head over to facebook.com/group/atcornerpodcast or search in the search bar AT Corner Community. Got anything else, Randy?
Nope, that was perfect. Thank you for helping us showcase athletic training behind the tape. Bye.
Happy National Athletic Training Month.
Yes, happy National Athletic Training Month.